Good morning, everyone. So it's a great pleasure for me to present the work that I've been doing with natural cycles. My name is Joyce Harper. I'm not Jonathan Bull. He couldn't make it today. I'm Joyce Harper, Professor at the Institute for Women's Health at University College London, and I've been working with the fertility and contraception app Natural Cycles, and we've looked at the analysis of menstrual cycle data using this app. Now, it's very important for women to understand their fertile window when they're trying to get pregnant. There's so many variations that can happen around the day of ovulation. Traditionally, we've looked at basically their calendar, and we say that if they have a 28-day cycle, they would ovulate around day 14 and have their next period 14 days later. That's the textbook definition of a 28-day cycle. But obviously, not all women have a 28-day cycle, and even within that, people would have variations on their day of ovulation. So the fertile window is defined as a 6-day period ending 24 hours after ovulation. So we know that the egg exists for 24 hours, is viable for 24 hours after ovulation, but sperm exists in the female reproductive tract for about 5 days, so this is our 6-day fertile window. But the nearer to ovulation intercourse happens, the data is showing us they've got a better chance of getting pregnant. So the calendar is not really an efficient way to just define when the woman is ovulating, so there are other ways that we can look at the fertile window. One way is looking at the basal body temperature. We can measure this. It rises just a small amount on the day of ovulation, but it is telling us that ovulation is happening, so not really that it's going to happen. So for couples trying to get pregnant, it's a little bit too late. Women can also check their cervical mucus, which changes around the days of ovulation, and they can also use luteinizing hormone sticks, which they urinate on, and it will tell them when their LH surges. And this happens about 40 hours before ovulation, so this can be a predictor that it's going to happen. So traditionally, women have used variations of these methods to find their fertile window. They've used pens and paper and graphs and thermometers and all sorts of things. But now we're in the days of femtech, or the use of digital technology for women's health, and we have these mobile apps. So Natural Cycles is an app that was actually developed for contraception by the husband and wife couple who designed it, but it can easily be flipped around the other way, and it's got over 1 million users, and about 25% of these are using it to plan pregnancy, not as contraception. But here's the app. It's a temperature thermometer, and they record the data into the app, and there's an algorithm that will learn about the woman's cycle as she goes on and help her predict, even with just the basal body temperature, of when she is going to ovulate. So the reason I contacted Natural Cycles and work with them is that I know they have a huge amount of data about the menstrual cycle, and I wanted to readdress this textbook definition of 14 plus 14 days. So in this study, we looked at women aged 18 to 45 who had BMIs from 15 to 40, and they had to enter at least 30 entries, so 30 cycles into the app. And our results show we looked at over 600,000 ovulatory cycles, and the studies before this have been on much smaller numbers. It's really big data. And we found that cycle length varied in women from 15 to 50 days. Obviously, the majority had the normal cycle around about 28 days, plus or minus a few days, but there were much shorter and longer cycles. The mean follicular phase length was 16.9, and the mean luteal phase length was 12.4. But if we break that down by cycle length, women with cycles under 21 days, their day of ovulation was 12.4. 21 to 35, the day of ovulation was 15.2, and over 35 it was 19.5. So this graph then shows us about the age. The mean cycle length decreased by 0.18 days, and the mean follicular phase length decreased by 0.19 days for each year of age from 25 to 45. So this is being shown in this graph here. Thank you, Jackie. And the cycle, I think I can do this. Oh, it's not doing anything. I was making it here, but not on there. The mean cycle length by BMI is shown in the bottom graph. Thank you. And there was a difference there. The mean cycle length per woman was 0.4 days, or 14% higher in women with a high BMI. But the BMI range for the women in this study was not representative of the normal population. They were much more on the slimmer side. So in conclusion, there is a lot more data that we haven't shown you in this poster. We have submitted this paper. It's the largest study of real-world menstrual cycle characteristics to date. Cycle, follicular phase and luteal phase lengths were significantly different to the traditional 14 plus 14 day model, and this large-scale data from using these apps is going to be really useful. I must say there are about 150 fertility apps on the market, and some of them are just looking at calendar. I've had my students say to me that, oh, I'm using a menstrual cycle app and it's telling me when I'm ovulating. If you're just looking at the cycle dates, you can't tell that. So if women are trying to find their fertile time, using an app such as this that's using basal body temperature and optionally LH is going to be really useful to them. But for us as scientists, it's providing really large, unique data sets where we can find out more about the menstrual cycle and the fertile stage. Thank you very much. So, got time for any questions? I think I've got a mic. Has anyone got any questions? Yeah, great.
Thanks for a really interesting presentation, and yeah, it's really exciting to have that real world data. With your BMI data, and I see you're saying maybe it's not so representative yet, but what do you, I assume you predict that with the greater BMIs we're going to keep seeing longer cycles, and do you have any theories about why?
No, so we know that obesity is linked to fertility. In the UK, you won't get NHS funding if you have a high BMI, and there's a lot of data about obesity and infertility. But the mechanism of that is unknown. But these sorts of data, we could look into that in much more detail. Natural cycles have been very clever, and everyone who registers for the app can consent to research. So this gives us so much data. I think we have so many questions about BMI, cycle length, etc. And now's the time to try and answer some of them. So I wish I had the answer now, but I don't. But we need to look at it.
I was more picking your brain, so I didn't.
Yeah, no. I wish we did. Thank you. Good question. Thank you. Any other questions? We've got a few more minutes.
Was there any pre-selection of patients, and how did you get that many data?
So women have been using this app for many years, and the app's been on the market for a long time. I can't remember when they first started, but they have been going for a long time. So women, it is a paid app. There is a free version, but to use the full app, it is a paid app. And so many women are using this either, as I said, mainly for contraception or as a fertility-based app. And so they are using it to monitor their own menstrual cycle. What I love about something like this is that it's educating women about how their body's actually working. I think so few women understand about ovulation, menstrual cycle, etc. I think it's really useful to do that. So this app's been going a long time, and this is why they've got so much data.
So as I mentioned earlier, I'm interested in this not fertile button.
Yeah.
And I want to know how they get to conclude that you're not fertile.
So obviously these two figures will vary through the one menstrual cycle. So the algorithm learns about the woman's cycle as time goes on. So if they're using it for contraception, when they first enter their data, obviously there's a few months for it to learn about them. So they tell you the days, the red days would be the days you shouldn't have unprotected intercourse because you could be at risk of getting pregnant. And it's quite a long window when the app's first used. And then as the app learns about the woman's menstrual cycle, about her day of ovulation, it will become shorter. But obviously, even though the ovulation window is 6 days, for contraception they do make that they have a window of plus or minus some days to make sure that they don't risk that. But turning it around for fertility is much easier. obviously trying to have something positive rather than something negative. So it will tell the woman the day she's ovulating from learning about her cycle, from her previous LH or basal body temperature measurement.
But doesn't fertile imply there'll be a fertilization?
Yeah.
So,
okay, so it's a good idea.
Which is a bit outside of the scope of the app, I would
Yeah. So we should say possibly fertile. Good point, Jackie. Good point. I'll feed that back. Any other questions? Yes. Yes, please. We have 5 minutes left.
So you concluded saying the traditional 14 plus 14 day model. Obviously, you've got a lot of data showing it's not necessarily the case. What do you think, in terms of women's knowledge or health professionals' knowledge on this? Is this what's communicated by health professionals, or like, what if? Is this enough for people to start changing the message, or what would you like to do with that information?
I'd like to do a lot with the information. So Jackie and I co-run the UK's Fertility Education Initiative, and we are very aware, it's come up already a few times at ESHRE, that gynecologists, GPs do not even really understand totally about the fertile window and even about female fertility decline. So there's a lot of work to be done globally to make sure people are aware. I think using these apps is a really good idea. I'm doing other studies around using femtech to help women understand about their bodies and their reproductive health and menopause, etc. So we need to educate, certainly. Our mission is to educate young people, parents, health professionals, GPs and teachers with this information. So we're doing a lot of work to try and get that done. And globally, there are other groups now that are also trying to get this information out there. So in schools, it's just taught in the UK, 28-day cycle, day 14 ovulation, 14 days later your period. But women aren't like that. We're really not made like that. So we've got to understand every woman's individual, and these sorts of technology can help her understand her own body. Any other questions? We've got about 2 minutes left. Yes?
Have you looked into the cycles which were a little bit longer than normal? So
Yes.
I see that you included 90 days, which is much longer than it should be. Have you looked, or have you analyzed anything?
So this was the first piece of work I've done with natural cycles, and obviously from this, lots of other thoughts have coming in. When I had reread all the traditional papers talking about the fertile window, they often excluded women with very short or very long cycles. So under 21 days or over 35 days are considered different, not the regular cycles, so they're often not in these studies. And certainly these groups really interest me. There were hundreds of women that fell into these categories. So yes, I'd like to look more into those, and I'd like to look into them when they're planning their pregnancy. How did this affect them getting pregnant and being successful? And we have this information now with this app, so it's really useful. So there's so much we need to do now, so it's very exciting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think we've still got a minute. Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you.